So what have you learned about the land that was previously plantations where they owned slaves in Howard County?
Well, there is a map that dates back to 1860, the early land map, and it has every little farm that had slaves on it documented on it. The most of them were in the western end of Howard County because it had the most land. But there was one that was in Marriottsville that was owned by a Mr. Anderson, and that was so large he called it Little Africa. And it now sits, I have discovered it, and it is actually on the land of the Marriottsville Quarry. There is one, or was one, which was a 700-acre farm in Glenwood, owned by a Dorsey. There is one on Mission Road, a great big field, which is now part of the site of the new Howard County Public School 13, and it was owned by a German farmer and a doctor, and he kept slaves there. In particular, there was one slave that was there from 1860 until 1950 when she died.
So the person was enslaved the entire time?
She never left. She was afraid of Black people, so she never left the plantation. However, in the book, The History of Blacks of Howard County, it states that when she died, he went to the Reverend Moore of Guilford Baptist Church and asked them to bury her because she was Black. And they told her, the Reverend said, no, you kept her there all this time. You bury her. No one knows where she was buried at. No one even knows what her real name was. She went by the name of Tipsy. And all that is in the book, The History of Blacks of Howard County. That book has so many oral histories. I never knew down in Laurel, Earl Levy land, Earl Levy Road off of Whiskey Bottom was owned by a Black man. I didn't know Mr. Earl Levy. Things about Roger Carter in Ellicott City. What is his importance to Howard County? Fells Lane.
What is his importance to Howard County?
Well, Roger Carter was the first Black-owned bus driver in Howard County. And the Roger Carter Center is now named after him. But unless you know that, you don't know. Where I live in Ellicott City, where the Sonic is, I live down the street from the Sonic. I never knew that 84 Lumber was built on that spot. I remember it when it came. However, 84 Lumber was the site of a Black church, and it was called Bethany United Methodist Church. There is a cemetery behind Sonic that is still a private family cemetery. I believe the Hammonds. All of Pine Orchard Lane, where I live, used to be Black owned. It's no longer. And the history is gone. But it mentions that in this book. That is why I'm trying so hard to get this book published, because it is so many histories from these families, and these families are dying off, or they haven't left the history to the younger ones.
You're mentioning places that have like buildings or, high income housing in Marriott's Ridge and, businesses. How have the economics affected the families, the Black families that were either owned the land or lived on the land? So how have the economics, have they benefited from it?
A lot of them, as the older ones die and leave their land, the younger ones can't afford to keep it. So they sell it off. I grew up in Western Howard County, and all around Cemetery Road where my mother lives, she's in the midst of $1 million homes, because as people died off, they sold their land, and the land was bought up by rich people. And not many of them are people of color.
Thank you. I could go on talking to you forever. So I think we'll pause, and then maybe we'll come back another time to get some more.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much. I'm gonna
You're welcome.